feel like the buildup for this talk has been too much with your intro of just like this momentary of like when I came to material design. Thank you for sharing that. As well as Sarah and Dan really building up this very timely discussion for us. But
Getting a lot of heat today.
No, but it's really great because that is exactly the feedback that we were hearing from the community, and that is what we were trying to solve with material theming. So we're really excited to be on stage with y'all and kind of share a lot of what went through that. And so I guess, we'll kick it off. So we're going to be talking about material theming, and that's how Google built an expressive design system so that everyone could build on material design, expressing their brand. And I'm Yasmine Evjen, a design advocate at Google, so I work really closely with the material design team, helping them gather feedback from the community, as well as collaborating on initiatives.
Just everyday bugging. We'll come over to each other's desks. I'm Michelle Alvarez, and I'm a designer on the material design system team.
And we're going to be talking about material theming, but first, we're going to take down a trip down memory lane of when material design was first introduced in 2014. And I promise this is important. It's not just to show you how awesome material design is. But I actually remember this moment of watching it in 2014. I was watching the Google I/O keynote. And so right after Sundar, Matthias Duarte, the VP of design, comes on stage. And so at that point, I'm like, all right, I'm excited. What are they going to introduce? And Google has had some bad rap of not really caring a lot about design. Other companies have been more design forward and thinking in the past. And so I was like, what are they gonna do here? Because this is an engineering-focused company. And when he goes in there, he talks about the work that went into building material design. And so material design was a system that was created to unify product experiences across platforms. And it was built on these principles. And the thing that was so interesting to me as I was watching that keynote of Matthias talking was just how all the principles were built on real, tangible things to make it really easy for the user. So they built upon this paper metaphor. And so it was something that everyone interacts with. You've all touched paper. I bet you there's some people sketchnoting on paper right now. So you know what it feels like when you touch it, how it moves, and all those things. And they brought a lot of those concepts into the UI. And so they had a lot of the visuals on the edges to kind of show off, how the surfaces work, as well as using light and shadows, something that was really something that everyone is accustomed to seeing. And then with building on the same concepts, they introduced this dimensionality, which wanted to create a spatial model for how you would interact for the UI. So if you think about it, we all live in this 3D world. If your ear itches, you kind of go and scratch your ear and you can find it. You don't have to kind of go looking for it. It's like, where's my ear? So you really are building a lot of the spatial models already. And so they wanted to bring that to the interface. And by elevating the most important actions, it was easy for users to understand how they could navigate through the UI. And motion was another big thing. And so motion should provide meaning that as you interact with items, it actually responds using motion to kind of guide the user so that they know where they're going. And responsive design was something that was really important. It was this underlying system that responded differently based on mobile, desktop, but it was all this unified system so that when you went from your Android app to the web, you felt like you were using the same product. And we were pretty opinionated when it came to how to create emphasis and hierarchy. So we used color and surface and typography to really drive a lot of that. And with that, we also created some resources that people could use. We had the Roboto type scale, as well as providing some of the color palettes. All of that together created this unified experience on Android, iOS, and the web. And so it was really great for all of Google's products to have a shared design language. And it also was used externally for over millions of apps on iOS, Android, and the web. I promise I won't continue saying that 100 times. But it really was really great for users that they could easily go and use an app and they knew what it felt like and they knew how to use it. So it was great for usability. But, as it's been mentioned here, there was a problem where a lot of the apps started to look the same. So you have here, a Gmail app and then a competitor on the right, and just pretty much changing the color is kind of the only thing that's different here, but all apps started to look very similar. I guess can you like have a material design app without a fab? Is that a rule?
It's allowed.
It's allowed. Okay.
Definitely allowed.
So our question was, how might we allow for brand expression while maintaining the usability of material?
So in order to answer this question, in order to differentiate Google products from third-party products, we needed a playground. And Google has a lot of different content brands, but Google is one unified brand, and we wanted to be able to express lots of different brands. So we made them up. We created these 8 vignettes, these 8 case studies with their own logos, their own style guides, their own tone of voice across all of these different product areas. And it was really important for us to have these different brand voices and principles in order to really vet the design decisions that we were making with material. So the next step in the process was super fun. This was probably the coolest job I've ever had. Basically, take material design and push it to the limits. Try to make the system as flexible and visual as possible. And we really did push it, and in some areas, maybe a little too far. We looked at really, really big typography and seeing if that could work in user interfaces. We explored these color treatments across different types of surfaces. And we played a lot with elevation and trying to see if we could switch that spatial model. But we knew that a lot of these material design principles were core to the system, and we couldn't go ahead and change them and sort of go against what we were representing as a system. So we had to sort of reel it in a little bit. And in order to do that, we sort of looked at all these explorations through these 3 lenses. Look at material principles. What is the core of our system? What can we change? What should we keep? Look at different content and contexts, and also look at what the user intention is. So if we think about content, we made sure to explore case studies across different content and contexts. So we could see what's right for editorial, what's right for finance. And speaking of user intention, we looked at how different material components can express different user intents. And each of our brands sort of had these outlined principles. So this is our recipe app, which is a little bit more of a lean back experience, a little bit more visual. So we're using our imageless component. Whereas if we look at the context of a hospitality app that you're trying to book a flight, you want a little bit more density. So we're using our list component, because that's the user intention of using this product. And of course, all of this had to be done while seeing the areas where we could inject brand. So how can we use color, typography, iconography in a more expressive way within UI? And we didn't just do this for our case studies, we also did this for Google. So this is what we call Google Material, which is a theme of material.
And so we had all of these different expressions, and we needed to find a way to allow everyone to build upon material design in order to express it while still maintaining the usability. And so we went back to the baseline components and updated them. And so the baseline components is a starting point both for designers and developers to be on the same page. And in our update, we also added new components as well as expanded state information. And this wasn't just done in sticker sheets, this was also done in code. So we do have open source code available on iOS, Android, Flutter, and the web, and it's all aligned with material design. So the design and development team work really closely together to ensure that you are getting pixel perfect code. And through all of that working together, it was this process of identifying what could be done within the system, what could be done within the components, and what couldn't. And as we were exploring all the different ways to express brand, there was a few systems that kind of appeared. One was typography, the other one was shape and color.
So we identified these areas to express brand, but we needed to go back to that starting point, those baseline components that Yasmine mentioned, to see where the areas were that we can inject that brand. So we broke down our component set into all of these elements and identified the areas where we can inject style. So in our button component, we have a text label. We can change the type there. We have a container. We can change the shape, pretty simple stuff. And you can change the color on both of those things. So the button component is pretty simple, but we did this for all of our components, and we outlined this in a crazy spreadsheet that got us all on board using the same terminology, which is not easy. We design with 4 different platforms, and getting 4 engineers and 1 designer to agree to one term is pretty hard. So we knew that we had these elements, and we knew that we wanted to inject these styles, but we still needed to maintain a system that we could allow both designers and engineer to control their brand at a global level. And this is sort of a background, little like nerd out moment around how we sort of structured this stuff. So it's a really simple system that's made up of these 3 categories. So each subsystem is made up of categories. Each of those categories maps to a set of attributes, and each of those attributes have values. Pretty simple, 3 levels. So we can look at this a little bit less abstractly through those subsystems. This is the material design type scale. It's used to create hierarchy within your UI. We actually refreshed it and added a few more styles to be a little bit more flexible with material theming. And each of these categories map to the same set of attributes. And these attributes aren't arbitrary. We intentionally chose them as design decisions of ways for people to express brand. So for typography, we can change our font family, size, weight, tracking, and text transform, our case. And when you start with material components, you're going to start with a set of values, the baseline values. So if we take one of these categories, let's go back to our button, that's going to map to rubato, which is the original material. But you can take these values and change them to whatever you want in order to express your brand. So here, we're changing to Rubik, a Google font, at medium, and we're changing it to sentence case. So when you make this one change to a category, it's not just going to be applied to one component. That change is going to cascade across all of the material components that map to that category, keeping that system logic. So with all of these new capabilities, we knew that we sort of owed the community sort of some answers, like how can I express brand in my system? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? So we created more guidelines in our spec. For typography, we recommend using display fonts for larger font sizes, and do not use them for smaller font sizes. It's not legible. And then we added some cautions as well. So when you use sentence case for interactive elements, make sure you're using other visual cues to make sure they still seem interactive.
And we also knew that resources and tools to actually enable theming was something that was really important, both from design and the development point of view. So one of the ways that we support designers and developers in choosing typography is Google Fonts, which is the largest repository of typefaces on the web. And you can use these on the web or in Android, embed them in your projects, and they're like free to use, and it's really great. So that's a really good starting point if you don't have a typeface, but you still want to think of other ways to kind of express your brand through typography. We also have the Material Design Theme Editor, which is a Sketch plugin. And through that, you can actually go in there and change your typeface, whether it's installed on your computer or if you download it from Google Fonts. And then it automatically maps to all the components based on the type scale that we created. So it's pretty awesome because you change one and it automatically populates using some awesome algorithm that Michelle helped develop with X height and the whatnot. But it was, yeah, I'm not a visual designer that much, so this is all Michelle's nerding thing right here. But it actually is really cool because then you can actually implement that type scale into your code.
So we're going to look at these hierarchical levels through the other subsystems that I mentioned, and this is shape. And our shape categories are pretty simple. We have small components, medium, and large. And the same concept applies here, where one subsystem is made up of a series of categories, but the attributes are all the same for each of those categories. And when you start with material design, you're starting with the baseline. We want to give you a starting point, but we want to allow you to change that starting point. And we're introducing a new style here with shape. Initially, material design, we were like, hey, there's one shape. Everything has to be a rectangle. Sorry. But now we're letting you change the shape size and introducing this new thing that we're calling the shape family. So you can cut different size components. And again, when you change one value on one category, that change cascades across all of the components. So we gave a little bit more guidance in our spec around how to be expressive with shape. So shape is used as a differentiator in a UI. So the material design floating action button, this was sort of where it started. It's a circle in a world full of rectangles, so it really guides the user's eye here. When exploring material theming, we found that asymmetry could drive the user's eye to certain areas where you're looking to emphasize. So this app is shaping this backdrop component to be asymmetric to draw the user into the navigation drawer. We also found that shape could be used to signify state. So in this component, the card is being swiped and being starred, and then it gets a little dog ear to indicate that it's been interacted with. We also have some ridiculous don'ts in our spec. It's like, I hope no one is creating this truck.
But what about if this is my brand, Michelle? It's brand expression.
Don't do it. Don't push your shape to the extreme where you can't identify what the component it is anymore, because that's going to really affect the usability of your app.
Cool. And so with that, we also provided some tooling. It is available on material.io. But it's actually, this tool is really neat because you have all the different categories, so small, medium, and large, as Michelle was breaking it all down. And then through that, you can actually change the shape of all the components, and then you can easily see it. So it just allows you to go in there and start playing and thinking about a different shape system that you might want to create. And it also allows you to maintain symmetry, or if you don't want to do that, like you want to build, you want to play around with some of that, it allows you to unlink it and then type in some of your values. So it just allows you to start exploring right away. So if you go to material.io under the shape design guidelines, it's an inline tool that is available there.
Cool. So lastly, we're going to look at these hierarchical levels of categories, attributes, and values through our color system. So this is our color scheme. We've broken it out into these categories that get applied to different surfaces in the UI, surfaces and content. And each of these categories map to the same set of attributes. We have a container hex value and a content hex value. And we intentionally broke it out this way in order to maintain accessibility values. So again, starting with our button, we've already expressed new typography, added shape, but we can also change the color. So if we change the value of the primary category to this pink color, it will be applied to every component that maps to that primary bucket. And this is our Shrine vignette. So we gave some more rules around, or guidelines, not rules, around how to use color in your UI. So we found that using brand accent colors in components like app bars and buttons were a good way to express brand and drive users to navigational components. One thing that we really try to drive through is semantic meaning of color. So this brand has a brand accent that is red. Red is typically used for error colors, and we don't want to confuse the user or create a negative context for the brand in the UI. So we recommend using a different color like an orange or a pink in order to keep the semantic meanings of your color. And last, but most importantly, all color should meet contrast and accessibility ratios.
And we also have a color tool that generates a tonal palette at material.io, an inline tool. And this tool is really neat because you can go in there and pick a primary color, and then it just gives you a lot of different options for you to choose from. So if you don't have like a secondary brand color or you want to explore other colors that play nicely together, this is a really neat tool to use. And one of my favorite things about this tool is because it does generate the tonal palette. You can then choose a shade that actually works for accessibility. So if there's not enough contrast with the on-primary color or the text and the background, you can choose another shade to either make it darker to have some accessibility. And I wish I could show this, but inside of the tool as well, if you are just looking, scrolling through all the different, or sliding through all the different color options, the text, like the P, it will change to a different color. So if it was too light, it would change to a black text. And when it gets darker, it changes to white, because we want to really drive that accessibility is really important for material design. And again, we have the theme editor in Sketch. So through there, you can go and choose some of your colors, like your primary color. And the neat thing about the tool is that then it automatically maps and populates all of your components. So it just makes it really easy for a first starting point for you to express color.
Cool. So yeah, this is our pretty simple system in order to inject brand into UI. So we have the categories that all map to our components. Those attributes are the areas where you can inject your brand, and the values are what you put in as your style guide.
And we have a lot of tools that will help you actually get it done. So if you use the theme editor and upload into Gallery, which is our collaboration tool, it actually provides you all the values for your design system for your theme so that your engineering team can actually go implement that right away and so that you're all on the same page. You can find all these tools at material.io. We have a lot of design guidance. You can go in there and just really, like you said, learn about design and know how to best express your brand through that. We have a lot of tools to help you from the beginning of your sketches to actually implementing it, as well as the code to actually implement this across platforms. And so we really want to make it really easy for people to build beautiful products faster. We're also working on, we have a thing on Glitch that we're building all these examples in code so that people can understand like how easy it is to theme using the material components. So definitely go check out glitch.com/@material. And it's a really neat project because what Glitch has allowed us to do, how many people actually know about Glitch? Yeah, quite a few of you. For those that don't know about Glitch, it's similar to like a code pen. It allows you to insert code up there and like have it automatically populate. The really neat thing about Glitch is that you can import from NPM, which is how on the web you use material components. You can import each specific component that you want. So like if you're only using our buttons or you're only using our tabs, you can keep your app pretty lightweight. And so Glitch has that all built in so that you can use it all from the browser. And the neat thing about the theming aspect, it's just in Sass and you add like a primary color and you set the on primary color and it automatically populates. We've actually had some of the visual designers that have never touched code before. We just gave them like a quick demo on how they could do that, and they've been actually creating some of the examples. So yeah, it's just been really neat to see how design and development can work together and how we can create a system that anyone can go in there and start building upon. So with material theming, it allows you to create it allows diverse brands to express themselves visually. And so we really look forward to seeing what y'all build with it so that, we can create more theming examples. And that's our talk. Thank you.
Thanks.
That is some exciting stuff. And so I reflect back on where we started in 2014, and I had a chance to talk to John Wiley, who was a member of the material design team and coined the term Project Kennedy before that. And he said, you get 30 minutes. And so I had my list of questions, and I was a big nerd. And he goes, I can tell you're a big nerd, and I'm going to just stop you right there. And he had two things, which I want to use as my two first questions about how things have possibly changed. The first was, who do you have in the room at Google to make all these decisions? And Google's so big now. It has so many lines of business. It has so many designers and developers and so on. Who needs to be in the room to make the decisions that set the tone for everybody?
Yeah, I think that material, we rely a lot on research. So we have our own research team that brings a lot of the findings to material, to the product managers, the designers, and engineers. So they're all in the room, as well as design relations. So I'm a part of the design relations crew, and our job is to be out with the community and understand a lot of their needs so we can express that to material to make some changes. Material theming is actually, that's kind of how it came out of when they were hearing a lot from the community, as y'all have heard here, is that, hey, material design is pretty much like, it all looks the same and you can't really express your brand. And so then that kind of fueled a lot of the material theming on how you could allow brands to do that.
How about you? You're in charge of layout and typography, or at least contribute to it. How do you make sure that the choices you make for typefaces and so on, everybody else is going to agree with?
Well, I don't make choices for typefaces,
Okay.
but we have a whole repository that anyone can use to pick typefaces. I think your question sort of sparked an idea in my head around like how things really happen at Google and like when the most work gets done. And when I started at Google, I had never done a design sprint, but that is really like the driving force of how all of these things happen. Getting all of the people in the room, from engineers to designers to product managers, and getting them all to agree on just one core goal, and then having the time to sit and execute on those goals is how this work happens.
That's great. And then the second thing he said was, do you think we went in with code to get Gmail and Maps and Search to change their interfaces to be more material? He said that would have been insane. I was like, yeah, I've seen like the 27 layers of divs in Gmail. It's monstrous. But this is all code. You are now modeling all of this across all the platforms. To what degree are those tools actually part of how you're getting work done within Google?
Yeah, so we have a team of engineers that work on what we call the Google material theme, and then we also have the baseline components. And they're all kind of built upon the baseline components, but we do have a group of engineers that works on actually like inputting that. And so they do kind of what we do externally, but internally talking to a lot of the internal teams and hearing, hey, we need a component that does this, or here are some more things that we need so they can work together to make that easier. Because when material design was first announced, we didn't have actually like code to back it up. So what you had is everyone had a fab, but they had like not a million, but 100 like different variations of what that fab would look like. And so in order to kind of maintain that consistency and also make it easier for people to just like start building right away, we knew that code needed to be in there.
How do you feel about how recognizable material needs to be? Some of those layouts that I saw, it doesn't evoke for me necessarily material, and it makes me wonder, actually, what is material? But how recognizable do things need to remain, and what properties, apart from opacity, for example, are left untouched?
Good question. That was sort of dual question. I think when we think about material, you can think about different levels of adoption. We do a lot of third-party sprints and find that some parties are more likely to piecemeal the system, which is still adoption and still a successful use of material design. And I think it really just goes back to those core principles and using them to build upon material. Like, we really see material as a starting point for people and not a fixed language that you should just use out of the box.
Yeah, I think like if you think of what is materials core, like messaging, if you look at, we have, the code and tools and the system now, is that we really want to help enable people to like build beautiful, usable products faster. And so we want to give people the tools to kind of get that done in whatever way they need to or want to use it. And so I think for us, like what you said, is any form of adoption or being able to build upon that like is a win for us. It doesn't have to have a fab or a card in order to feel like, hey, people are using material.
You talked about your categories, attributes, and values, and you create this taxonomy. And what did you learn in that process around who creates that taxonomy, and which people like yourself might have leaned into that conversation with a strong point of view versus sort of lean back and let other people think about that architecture?
Yeah, taxonomy, terminology, it's one of the biggest blockers on material. Getting everyone on the same page to say, this is what we're calling this, is really, really hard. It's just a matter of compromise, and some platforms will have really good reasons why they can't call something because that already exists, or it just doesn't make sense in the framework. So it's really a compromise. It's about getting everyone to just agree.
Okay. And I was shocked near the end when you said, maybe they're just using our button, maybe they're just using our card, which invokes this, you mean Frankensteins are allowed? And so how do you anticipate that the tools and the designs that you have get flowed into other things to create a composition that still has harmony to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we're building the baseline components, the reason why people do use materials is because they know you're going to have a consistent experience if you start building with that. So that is kind of core of us thinking about, we're not just building components, we're building a system and UIs that people can work in. And so we do think about it from like that holistic level. But I think with the new theming capabilities, you can pretty much shift a lot of things that could fall into your current UI. I don't know, maybe you might have some more insight into that. Got it. You got it. All right, we're good.
Nailed it. And so to close out, I would like to hear from both of you on this, because you started the whole talk with, Google kind of has a bad rap for this stuff. I think it's had a bad rap, and now you have a different rap, and it's clearly one of quality, and you're creating a system that a lot of people trust. So what does that mean to your work as an individual at Google to sort of, I don't know if it's a burden, but to take responsibility for what that role is in our industry?
That's a hard question. Yeah, I mean, we're continuing to try to evolve the system. We outline type, color, and shape, but we're looking at all of our subsystems to see how we can continue to evolve how theming works, and working with design relations to get feedback from the community to see what the needs are and how we can keep pushing the system.
Yeah, that's funny because I was talking to Sarah outside a little bit, and we were just talking about, material design looking the same, and how once you get to a certain level of adoption where a lot of people are using it, you do come under more heat or whatever. But I mean, not heat, because it's all feedback that we want to make our product better. But there is an element of oh yeah, we have a responsibility for the people that are already using material design in their products to ensure that we don't completely break something that they can no longer use. And I think that that's something that, in the talk, when we're looking at all these different expressions, and we're like, okay, how do we help people that are using material design just as it is, transition into that? And we're still looking at ways to provide more examples to kind of help guide people, because you do see these beautiful case studies, and you're just like, wow, that theme looks amazing, but I have no idea where to even get started. Or what are some simple things that I could do I can apply theming so it doesn't look so, early material. And so I think for us that there is a responsibility from our team to start create those examples, as well as looking at how to, educate people and train people to kind of drive that. So yeah, I guess we don't take it lightly. I think everyone that I've interacted with on the material team and design relations is we're all building this, and we're all really passionate about helping designers and developers build. And so every decision that we make, we're all advocating to make it easy for people.
That's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Yasmine and Michelle.